My name is Steve Arneson. I'm the VP of LexisNexis Risk Solutions, and I'd like to introduce my guest this morning, Peter Wilton.
Good morning.
This morning we're going to talk about a single customer view. And I think that this is probably an issue that most people in the room this morning have either faced or are facing currently. I've been in this sort of industry for 20 years plus, and I've lost count of the amount of conversations that I've had around the golden record principle, or the single customer view. So I think this is going to be a really insightful and interesting conversation. We're more than welcome to take questions during the chat. So if there's anything that comes up and you'd like to ask a question, then please just raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. So without further ado, we'll kick off. So Peter, let's talk about the business challenge first of all. So what was the business challenge that drove Aviva to create Person ID or create the single customer view?
As you said, I mean, people in the room will have faced the challenge that established financial service organisations have. Most organisations have grown through mergers, acquisitions, inheriting data platforms that can be quite old, like 40, 50 years old, with the kind of data controls that were not put in place or even thought of in the sort of 70s and 80s. So consequently, when you're trying to pull together a single customer view, you have the challenges of inconsistent data, old data. Customers may not have updated the information. And what you're trying to do is to bring together all this and safely match and merge highly sensitive bits of information, pension statements and things like that. So we basically had to find a way of creating a record where currently our policy admin systems are still the golden record, all of them, because they have the policy communication. Because actually we had a mixture of data in the middle, which we were forcing together to create customer service views, so that when our frontline staff speak to our customers, they have a picture of all the product holding, be it in a customer service situation or claim situation or something like that. And what we've also got quite a successful digital proposition for our customers, so that they can go on and see all their products and services. Well, that was the promise, at least. The reality is when you have a risk-adverse situation, actually, if in doubt, don't. Yeah. And what we found when we started onboarding, particularly we had the heritage of Aviva data, which was working pretty well. And then we ingested millions of new customers after the Friends Life acquisition. We had all these conflicts coming on, and we would say, you can see all your products online, but the reality was a lot of people couldn't. And they told us, which caused operational demand and all those kind of things. So we've been grappling with the challenge of getting a single customer view around our digital propositions, be it an operational view and a customer-facing digital view, and have tried to make incremental steps, but we decided a year or so ago, a couple of years ago even, that actually what we needed to do was take a completely different view of how we did that, so that we could bring our records together using the data that was available in the marketplace, not just our own data, which is old. Pension can be 20 or 30 years old. And if someone's not updated us on their address or something like that, it's very difficult for us to do. So we need to find a way in which we could look beyond our data and match and merge records together. And that's basically what we've done.
So I'm an Aviva customer, and the My Aviva page, I've got various different policies, and to be honest, it all worked for me. But the drive in terms of Aviva was to get to a point where the customer could see a view of all of their policies across the different areas of the organisation and be able to interact in a digital manner with the with the Aviva brand and the Aviva services. So yeah, great. What about the business case? So this is always an interesting concept when you talk about getting approval at board level or finding someone to sponsor a project such as this, especially in a regulated organisation where there's risks involved in doing something like this as well. So what did you have to do at Aviva in terms of creating the business case and getting support from the organisation and people around you?
Like most organisations, the key change over the last few years is that we've moved from a policy-driven administration system approach to a customer-focused view. So once you put the customer at the heart of what you do, that actually starts to drive outcomes. Now, what we've done is do that, but convert that into the operational demand failure was costing us money. We had 60, 70 people actually receiving calls saying, I can't see all my policies on my Aviva. It's a relatively small percentage of the book, but actually, perversely, those customers who are multi-product holders are the ones that are suffering most. So we had to do something around that. So it was surfaced around that, customer failure demand. That was translated into operational cost savings, but that's very difficult when you're justifying a fairly major investment in data. Data as a service is effectively what we're calling it internally. Yeah. So we had to look for other things. So there are regulatory benefits. If we've got conflicting data and say we've got one customer with the correct address and the same customer on a different policy with a particular pension with with an incorrect address, actually we're not sending the regulatory pension statements that we need to. But we can look at our data and actually say that address is right, that address is wrong. Let's correct that rather than go through the expense of trying to reconnect. Just look at the data. And then using an external data set, we were able to say, actually, even if we can't see that in our data, if someone else has a view based upon regular updates and a data set that moves weekly, monthly, whatever, and is updated with voters' rolls, which we don't take and don't have access to directly, we can actually start to say that actually both our addresses are wrong, but someone else is telling us that this person is living here. Yeah. So we can then build that in and have a workflow to reconnect with that customer without having to go through a trace process in its own right. The data tells us. And, we can take views on the process we use, the priority. If it's a very high confidence address, we can look to things like non-first party verification. If the weight of evidence is there, particularly if we've got a bit of information over here and the external data that we're bringing in has a view, we can actually have a risk-based model which says just tell the customer we're going to do it rather than rely upon them to respond. Customers, 95% of customers tell us when they move and things like that. It's the 5% that don't. Yeah. And if you don't address that quickly, that 5% quickly gets up to double digits in terms of problems. And that's really what we're seeing is the way to go. So in answer to your question, actually, when we started looking at it from a customer point of view, the outcomes were clear. Multi-product holding, treating customers better. Actually, we're here to service needs when someone needs us. Point of claim, particularly in a death claim situation, if we haven't linked all the policies together, we can't settle that completely in one. We have a sort of an orphan or a disconnected or an unclaimed asset that we then have to follow up on and spend money doing that. So having a more complete view of the customer makes good business sense and actually delivers to the customer what we need to deliver as an insurer. As most people know, Aviva is not just a pension company. It's retirement savings, yes, but it's investments. We have a separate retail investment arm. Yeah. We've got general insurance, we've got health, we've got protection policies, we've got workplace pensions, and we've got personal pensions. We deal through financial advisors, we deal through GI brokers, we deal through banks.
It's quite a complicated
It is
estate.
quite a complex situation.
Yeah. But you mentioned risk-based approach there, and what you're doing is quite an innovative way of solving the problem. I'm guessing there had to be some creating of that business case and selling that business case into the organisation, because I'm guessing there would be some people that might have been somewhat risk averse.
Yeah, surprising who, actually. When we first saw the product, and I went through a phase where thinking, I can see this happening. We must be, in an organisation of our size, we must be doing it. Someone must be looking at this. Yeah. So the first stage was talking to my boss and the chief data scientist and things like that, saying, okay, are we doing this? And I said, no. Okay, should we do this? And can we do this ourselves? No, we probably can't, because we're not going to buy all that data in. And actually, as an organisation, unless we've got a legitimate use for using it, we can't. So we went to IT and said, technically, can we do this? And we said, yeah, technically we do. We'd like to do it, but risk would never agree, because our system, particularly our customer system, is completely risk adverse. If it's not a perfect match, don't share it without manual intervention. But when you have, several 100,000 people not being able to see all of their products, that is an expensive manual operation. Yeah. So we had to find another way of doing it. When we started talking about the risk issues, the non-compliance issues, non-communication issues and things like that, all of a sudden risk thought, actually, there are some things that we're struggling with here that we can do. Accurate personal data and cross-platform conflicts and incorrect data in things, even if it's things like transposition of day and month of birth in our data, can have consequences. Mm-hmm. So being able to have an external view of that data, which is actually a regulatory requirement now, actually meant that risk have become our greatest advocate. So we've turned what was a potential blocker, that if we get any challenges on budget or things like that, risk are coming to our support and helping us. IT are really enthusiastic because they've wanted to do this for ages, but haven't been able to do for a number of ideas. And we're saving money and improving customer outcome.
Yeah, fantastic. What about the people involved? So as that business case was taken up through the organisation, who were the roles? Who got involved and who supported it? How was the CDO involved? Were there CEOs involved? What was the thinking there?
It was, to an extent, it was an initiative that was driven by quantum data science, mm-hmm. our practice, where we recognised the importance of accurate data, not just for customer service, but also driving our models as well. Because our models are based on, if we're modelling based on someone living in one postcode, but actually 20 years later, they're living in a completely different postcode. Yeah. We were driven that, and to an extent, we drove it from the side of our desks for a while, because we didn't have a CDO. Yeah. We didn't have someone in the business that actually recognised the importance, the power, the value of the data. We have one now. We have a CDO that's in place, but we drove that through. So that meant without a CDO, we had to go to the CEOs of our business units, our core business units, Life, and everything that sits below Life, GI, and all the distribution that sits below GI, and engage them and allow us to do some testing, some evaluation using, all the policy records. And I think you probably remember some of the challenges we had getting authorization to actually do the MI on what was termed the crown jewels. Yeah. Sending that data out to a third party to do the MI to prove the business case. And one of the CEOs was also an ex-risk officer. And it helped that actually she saw the risk issues and the benefits of doing that. And getting her support was actually a big step forward.
That's critical, yeah. Just touch on obstacles for a second. So, whenever you're driving some form of change through an organisation, it's never a straightforward journey. There's always some obstacle to overcome. Can you talk about some of the obstacles that you had to address?
Well, in the business case, there was a degree of problems that had been put to one side because they were too difficult, too expensive. And as a result, they didn't have budget around them. So when you were trying to support a business case around cost savings, there were challenges, particularly from the people responsible for P&Ls and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was the challenge first was everyone said, really good idea, should be doing it, but I'm not going to pay for it.
I haven't got any money.
Yeah. And it wasn't until the new group chief exec came in, established a C-suite person responsible for the customer and recognised the need or the importance of data, that we started to think about the possibility of making a central investment to actually address all the thorny, difficult problems that we've had, so that we can create that central record with the customer, that even if we don't operationalise all that data, actually we have a true view. We know where our customers live. We know what kind of geodemographic group they are in. Yeah. We can surface to the businesses that actually you've got this bit of data that's wrong in your policy admin system. Actually correct that, and then miraculously, if you correct the data, everything is easier in the centre. But as part of that process, we've gone a stage further in that actually we've got our data, and we've now got an external view of up-to-date, accurate personal data, and actually that will move monthly. So as people move, as people die, we will be notified, and we can forward plan actions. So it takes about 6 months for the estates to notify us that someone's died, but we're going to get an earlier indication of that, and for operational planning we can flag that. And if after 6 months we haven't been told, we can actually take some kind of action to do it, and then therefore the backlogs of unknown deaths disappear.
And I think it's important to state to the group as well that morbid conversation, I would guess, but a backlog of unknown deaths to a pension organisation actually has quite a significant impact, and there's quite a significant amount of money associated with that, and getting that money to the parties that need it and deserve it is an important outcome for Aviva. So
reconnections, reunification, big budget areas. We have project teams working on those backlogs. Yeah. But now we've got the data to inform those, prioritise those, and go forward. And that's the next step. That's where we're going.
So where are you now? So in terms of the project timeline and the scope of the project, where are you currently, and what value is the project delivering for Aviva at this point?
Where we are is that it's all signed off within the business, and we're just finalising the integration of the data into our operational customer domain, separately, and quarantined separate from the customer data, so we know what our customers has told us, and we have a separate view. That will be implemented later on this year, within weeks. We actually had a phase before where we actually took all the data, did the analysis, and proved the business case. So we have a view of the gaps already, but that's going to be refreshed this year. Our first step, the single most important thing to this, because it actually impacts everything else, is improving the matching within our systems, because that way our frontline staff have a better view of the customer and can respond. And when the customer says, I can't see all my policies, they don't have to go out to the policy admin system and say, do you have the policy for this customer? We can actually say, no, that third-party administrator has a policy, and if we need to flag an action out to there, we can do it. Or if we need to clean up the data, we can do it so that we have a better view. So that customer view is there. Obviously, My Aviva registration is crucially important. Customers want to interact digitally. We want them to interact digitally for obvious reasons. And that matching, basically improving the journey, means we can actually re-engage with all those customers, move to a digital delivery platform, We can improve our data models based upon the actual view of the current data, not the historic view. And things like the claims process and things like that get more efficient, more effective. That's the first step. The second step is looking at how we operationalise the mortality information we have, and the address information that we have. You know, insurance companies, pension companies with long relationships have built up over time a backlog of unconnected customers, particularly when you've developed through mergers and acquisitions. When we reconnect, sometimes we say, "Hi, we're Aviva. You've got a policy with us," and the customer says, "No, I don't. I took my policy out with XYZ company, Commercial Union, General Accident, Sun Life, Friends Life," and we have to overcome that as a hurdle. So again, dealing with backlogs is more difficult, more expensive, more difficult to engage with customers. So not only can we address the backlog, but actually, because we'll get an early view of someone potentially going away, we can actually initiate action sooner. Particularly if they're registered on MyAviva, we can digitally engage with them and say, "Have you forgotten to tell us you've moved?" And that saves a lot of money. I think there's a question.
Just curious to really find out how Lexis actually helped you. So you haven't talked anything about the tools or anything that was used. How did they support you in your journey?
Okay. I saw the Lexis ID product when it was first introduced to the UK. And actually, when we first looked at it, I was looking at trying to find a way of, I think the phrase we used was trace the untraceable. So where the data that we had on a customer was very poor. And what we did in that sort of small-scale trial was to give the data we had, warts and all, difficult cases. Richard will remember there were some nuggets hidden in that data. And what we found was the depth and breadth of the data set associated with the Lex ID meant that actually they could find a match between our limited data and the current data and the historic data that's been built up, old addresses, old names in the case of sort of married couples and things like that. So straight away on the reconnection side, that had impact. Through understanding that, we understood the power of up-to-date, accurate personal data. And then we went through a series of loops in terms of MI verification, proof of concept and analytics phase that we went through, where we worked to shape the product and the kind of data variables that we had a legitimate business interest in acquiring, because we have a responsibility to keep our data up to date, and the current phase is only dealing with customers, not our prospect base and things like that. But so for our millions of customers, we can have this up to date picture, and we worked in partnership together to do that, and developed not just the initial load, because often what we do as a business, we go and solve a problem, we get the data and we have a one-off view, tick, we've done that, we've updated it. But actually what the business is investing in, less about that, actually the updates every month, the data is refreshed. There are a series of trigger events that we're interested in, and if Lexis see the data move, they will tell us that it's moved and we can take the appropriate action around that. And as it might not be immediate action, we might just track it, and then when we'll allow our customers or the estates to let us know, and when they don't, then we'll action it.
I think, is it worth talking about matching for a second, because I think this might help add some flavour to your question. The universe of data that Lexis has, we use a process called statistical linking, which actually scores, provides a score for any records that we start to, or any data records that we start to link together. So, Peter, when you tested that, what did you find? What did the matching or the statistical linking side of things give you that that maybe you hadn't seen previously?
Well, the statistical probabilistic system that you use, rather than a rules-based system, means it's less black and white, it's more grey, but it's predicated on a big data set.
Yep.
Was it, you know the numbers better than me, 45 million financially active adults in the UK, an average of 27 data sources coming together in your, so we have 27 data clusters, well, you have 27 data clusters, we have access to it, and we have the history for each of those data clusters so that we then match, just a straight match with cleaned up data against the base. And actually what we found was the ability, a bit like the tracing the untraceables, the ability of the product to link meant that we were getting 97, 98% match rate, which was, I said what I thought was a high target, and we beat that target. What we've also managed to do, like a lot of organisations, we have horses for courses. We have 2 matching systems. Our marketing system, which is designed to maximise the data coming together, but then it's about response. So we don't want to write to people who aren't going to respond, dead people, people who there's an issue going on, people have gone away, obviously, things like that, people that have registered with the NPS. We have that system, and that's great for marketing because we're not exposing data. Our operational system is a rules-based system, 729 different rules of why someone shouldn't match. What this is able to do is to look beyond the data that is mismatching and actually formulate and give us a URN that we can collapse a record around without requiring people to be involved.
Yeah, yeah.
And that will dramatically is a game changer.
Final question from me, and then I think we can open for questions in the audience. What about the future? So, we're at the point where we're about to, the golden record becomes the business as usual. Where are you going to take it in the future? What are some other things that you're exploring and additional value that you think you can derive from it? Well,
this is considered by the business to be foundational. So it's a strategic central investment in the quality of our data. We have some very strong user cases, which means that the product washes its face fairly early. Yep. But we have a whole load of other user cases, and we've built an infrastructure so we can add other data units and evolve and broaden the scope of the product out to some of our distribution channels aren't included currently because they are administered separately. GI Broker, they have their own fast trade platform, so that we don't actually service those customers, the brokers. Yeah. But it'd be very useful to have an understanding of who those customers are and what the overlap is between the customers. Now, we've done the MI on that, and we actually know what that picture is. So we'll go to those business units and actually sell the benefit of having this total UK customer view. Once we've proved the quality of the data there, we can start to look at do we actually run our customer communication, operational admin communication from the policy admin systems, or do we take the golden record in the centre and do it? And that opens up a whole gamut of opportunities around saving money, improving services. And I did some work a few years ago on uni statements where you basically, instead of sending 7 statements out, you send 1 with all the information and summarised. That kind of thing is on the roadmap, but I'm concentrating on delivering the next stage at the moment. Fantastic. Okay, thank you, Peter. Can I take questions from anyone in the audience? Is there anything that you'd like to know more about? Any questions for Peter?
Actually, I don't have a question. I want to say congrats. You work. It happens, and I've checked my own data to make sure that I can see all of everything. So well done.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So there are various organisations that do a similar product offering, right? So what sets you apart from them? Because you just collate data and sell it on. So what's unique to LexisNexis? And why partner with them, Peter?
Okay, do you want to take it first?
You're right. We license data from lots and lots of sources around the world. The difference with how LexisNexis utilize that data is the probabilistic matching that we use to bring it together. So we take data from, let's say, the large credit bureaus in around the world, but we do it from all of them, well, most of them, and then we bring it together in such a way that we calculate the probability of the various elements of data being connected and linked to one individual. So the real difference, the foundation of all of the work that we've done with Aviva has been the ability to have a higher quality match rate and higher quality probability and likelihood of the data being linked to that individual. And then we're able to provide the unique URN so that we can use that as the foundation to leapfrog into any other areas of data that we have based upon that individual. So that's how Lexis do it differently. I'll let Peter answer the question of why.
I'm going to touch on how. That was the standout. It was the probabilistic, and obviously coming from a data science background, we're quite into that kind of thing. But we were able to prove it. Yep. We went through a process of not just a market review, but also getting the data in and doing some weird data science stuff to actually prove the accuracy of the matching and identify risk. I mean, there are risks in everything. There are risks at the margins, which we've been able to identify and understand and make sure we take our risk colleagues and our data governance colleagues on the journey to the point where we have a committee that reviews all the recommendations that we do. And it's getting to the point now we're saying, but actually the data's telling us that it's the right answer. And it's that journey, that partnership we've been able to go through. We probably have a better understanding of some of your product because we've actually been working to develop it and understanding it. So the market review was important. It's taken longer than I had hoped. Lex will know I get impatient when we don't move more quickly. But we've basically got that. We have got a strong product that everyone is confident in, and that's because we've worked in partnership to actually deliver a product for the 21st century.